The game of football today is of just lining up and playing smash mouth are done. Every play of football has got movement to it, and kids got to understand how to make contact with their hands and ride a player, hand placement, body positioning. Once they get moving, how do they avoid the hands and get past them? Same thing with a linebacker. The concept of linebackers being a backside linebacker, slow playing when somebody's counting, coming out with them. How do they take on the block? Is it inside out? Is it outside in? Same thing with DBs. If they're coming up to, if they're playing press coverage and you got a receiver coming off the line, how can they play press correctly? So I think it's very applicable to a lot of positions in football.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, you definitely, with the Colt pad, it was very easy for our kids to be much more aggressive. I mean, you know, Coach Wright, who coaches our running backs, slot backs, and he would have a, you know, his blocking period last year, it was like almost pulling teeth. Anytime you had to go to in your natural practice schedule, now you go to the blocking period, you know, and it was like, you know, you thought you were taking them to the dentist, you know, it was like, oh, you know, because I mean, you know, they're beating each other up and we don't have many guys, you know, there's very few schools that have an abundance of players, and so, you know, they start basically forming a union, and, you know, you don't hit me hard, I won't hit you hard, and, you know, you get one of those. So now this year, they were excited about it. I mean, they actually were excited to go to their blocking period. It was intense. We didn't have to go long. I mean, you'd have a 10-minute period, but it was very physical, very intense, but your guys are coming out healthy, you know what I mean? And, you know, and it just becomes kind of an exciting thing. Is, you know, brings back a little bit of machismo in practice, and so, no, it is great. I mean, it's really good. The kids are excited about it, so, yeah, I think it's really a must. I mean, for us, I'd never do it another way. I mean, we actually added another Colt pad during the season. We got another one, and we'll probably add on next year.
I think the Colt was made a big difference in our practices for the simple reason the Colt is lifelike. It has arms on it. For younger players, the squared shields was just a pad they could lean on, whereas the Colt with the hands, you could actually demonstrate to them hand placement, pad level, which is real important to a youth football player. It's a tool that you can use to create muscle memory at an early age. I think it's been real beneficial to our program.
The Colt was a huge pad for us this year because we found it able to use it when we were in pads or without. So for us, it was a great way to implement all of our stuff. We would start out our everyday drills right from our footwork to hand placement with the pad. We found it so much different than any other pad that we ever used. With the arms extended, it was such an advantage for our kids on where to put your hands. So in all of our footwork drills, everything we do implement in our hands as well. When you used any other kind of shield, you never really could see if the kids got their hands in the right spot. So with the arms on the pad on the Colt, you know, we knew right away if our hands were inside when we're doing single blocks or even on zone, if we're trying to rip through. Where I found it to be a huge advantage was in pass protection, believe it or not. I mean, for us to get our first initial punch into a chest plate was a huge difference where you could never really see that with any other pad. So our kids found out, hey, if my arms get a little wide, I'm outside of the arm and it doesn't work out quite as well as it should. So we found that to be a huge advantage for us.
Absolutely, that's one of the most fun, I think, comes of it, because you can strike it as hard as you want. There's no risk of injury. Traditionally, when we would teach any type of move, a shed move or a pass rush move, you're going on a body and you're going against your partner. Well, the biggest problem with going against your partner is he doesn't want to get hurt, and the other guy doesn't really want to get hurt either. So with this, it allows us to put them in a position that we need them to be put in, but also be able to get violent and strike it. The arms are going to come back into the same position. It allows you to do different moves, different combinations of moves without the risk of injury.
Breastplate would be. Oh, absolutely. I think with youth, when you coach youth, you ask a youth to go through a drill half speed because you're trying to train your defense or offensive lineman. It's very difficult for a youth to do that. They either A, don't want to be beat up by their best friend, or B, they don't want to give an effort to the point where it will give a realistic look. So what the bag allows me to do as either a coach, as I'm holding it, or one of my assistants, or one of the other players, is it allows us to go live without having to worry about a player who is we're using as the dummy, either going full go, not given the opportunity to a realistic look for the player that we're trying to coach, or not doing anything at all and just kind of letting the guy do whatever he wants. So it allowed me to control the speed that I
The pad being mobile is probably the best thing for our skill position guys with blocking, just because you're blocking an open space, so it's a lot more difficult. You have to focus on breaking down your feet. The defender's going to break down his feet, so you have to be able to lower your hands, adjust to wherever the positioning is going to be of the pad, which is realistic to game play, because no guy's ever standing still. Nobody's ever just square to you, chest to chest. That's not how you block an actual game.
Well, I think there's a lot more programs out there today that are starting to realize that the more you just stand there and beat on each other, kids don't last. I mean, when you look at the total sum of everything they're doing, of constantly smashing in practice, then you've got scrimmages, then you've got games, and coming back to practice, that wear and tear starts to wear kids down. So that being able to have a tool that you can rep live and not beat up the person that's doing the rep or the person that's holding the pad, I think is a huge asset from being able to develop the violence of doing something live and not getting beat up physically, and getting kids the concept of reps. Reps are plural. So a kid's not going to have a perfect rep first time. It may not happen to the 50th time, but once it's there, you're always able to do things at speed and stay healthy. And I think that's a huge selling point in using something like this.
Like I said, the defensive kid holding the Colt naturally stays lower because they don't want to just get hit in the face anyways. Nobody plays football to do that. So with the arms, it actually gives them a separation, allows them to play lower, which forces the offensive lineman to keep his hips down, move his feet, and keep his pad level where it needs to be.
I don't think you can ever be too violent in, as far as talking about offensive and defensive line play. What the Colt allowed us to do is rep at full speed. And it also allowed us to make sure our players stayed in position. We do a lot of stuff that's half the man, either a one technique or a two or a three. We're always in some type of a shade traditionally. And what the pad allowed us to do is maintain that shade, but also the violence of which to stay in that position. Offensive linemen are moving and shuffling all the time. Defensive linemen have to work an edge because they're generally in a 2-on-1 situation with two offensive linemen against one defensive lineman, especially now with zone blocking and chip blocking and things of that nature. We have to maintain an edge, pad level, and we have to maintain separation. The arms on the pad allow us to have that natural separation, but also allow us in our striking with either a rip or a snake or whatever move that we're executing, or a shed move as far as run blocking goes. It allowed us to maintain that level of intensity throughout. And we were also very thin, so we could not risk a player getting hurt or nicked up in a simple drill. This allowed us to go rep full speed, and it was used effectively, and very, very pleased with it.